right. Well, welcome. Hello. I'm Molly McKinnon. I'm the director for the Center for Accessibility. And today we are going to be looking at accessibility and disability resources. We're going to tell you about our center, but then we are also going to kind of go through some ideas on how you can make and do quick changes to your Blackboard or syllabus to help with accessibility for students, for all students, not just students registered in our office. So, all righty. So we are super excited because this year we are a full staff office, and that is only going to create more success for students at NDSU, retention because they feel supported and wanted, and this is our staff. So again, I'm Molly McKinnon. I am the director, and we have.
I'm Claire Shields. I'm an accessibility specialist. We have 4 specialists in the office now. Jessica Anderson, Erika Berg, and Trista Haverluck, who is brand new to us. I've been here since now my 2nd semester on campus. I did my undergrad here at NDSU, so the license. And we do have 2 grad assistants as well in the office this year, so that's really helpful as well. So any questions you have, they can field some things for you, and then also transfer it to us if there's some deeper questions that you have. We're always welcoming staff to contact the office with any questions. What we do at CADR. So the big debate was, do we still call it CADR or do we call it CADR? And so we've decided on the Center for Accessibility. So anyway, so that's kind of a standing joke. What we do is we provide academic accommodations for students that register with our office with a documented disability, and that's usually something that is listed in the DSMV. So they would come to our office with a diagnosis, and we would provide academic accommodations that are appropriate for that student. We also handle any residence life accommodations that students may have coming on campus. Typical ones could be single room and private bathroom, those kinds of things. And we do help accommodate that. We have ESAs that come on campus, emotional support animals. We also handle all of that in our office as well. Sometimes people don't know that we do handle the temporary medical condition support. So if students are coming in with medical conditions that have not been diagnosed yet, they're still in the process. If a student is injured on campus during the school year, we also help handle some of that with them as well. These wouldn't be considered accommodations in terms of permanent, but they would be a temporary medical accommodation. We do work with students on that. We also handle the pregnancy and parenting support for students as well, and that would help them in terms of when they have to take maternity leave and those kinds of things. What we do not do is we do not provide accommodations for employees. So that would all be handled through HR. We do not do much with English as a second language that's not considered a documented disability. We do support students with the language barrier, though. We can help accommodate some things during a testing period. We have provided some translation applications for students if they're down testing with us. Again, most of this is approved through faculty. We really don't do too much without checking in with faculty to make sure that these things are possible and that they're okay with the faculty in terms of academic integrity. And we don't do retroactive. So if you have a student that ends up in your office mid-year with all the wheels falling off, you can please send them to us if they disclose that there's a disability happening. We would never have you ask questions about a disability, but if they disclose to you, that self-disclosure, you can send them to our office. Anything that we put into place would be only moving forward from the time that we do the intake with the student. But we will help that student work with the faculty to kind of help clean up anything that's maybe not going well for them. Again, but all the accommodations would not be retroactive. So we would definitely work with the student and the faculty if anything has gone awry during the semester.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just, it has to do with this. So the student comes in and has never been diagnosed, doesn't have any formal paperwork. Is there a system and on the college, in the college to diagnose, I guess, or get that official ball going so that they can get those?
We do not, so our office does not do diagnosis assessments. However, we can, depending on the disability, the center, the counseling center does have the ability to do some diagnosis of some disabilities, but we really encourage them to find a provider in the community. And we'll work with student health too, if it's something on the other side, not mental health. But our center does not do academic testing. We do not get scores for LD or any type of a diagnosis assessment.
So if I had a student that, just to give an example, says that they think they must have, I don't know, ADHD and that it's really kind of flaring up, or just as they're talking to me, it just sounds like that and they feel like they have a situation, but they've never been diagnosed, do I still send them to you first, or should I tell them you need to get
I would send them to us just to build that rapport. We'll connect them with the outside community and give ideas and suggestions, but it's a higher chance that if you were to say, hey, why don't you try the Center for Accessibility to see if there's things that they can support you with, and then when they come to us, it's a higher chance they'll come versus if you were to say, go to Solutions or go check at Sanford Health to see if there's a diagnosis center. So we do prefer you refer them to us just for the close-knit support piece of it.
Right, and they're more likely, like Molly said, to do the follow-through piece. So if they are struggling and they come to us, it's again, that we build that trust, let them know that everything's confidential. They can share more information with us that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with the faculty. Not that you don't have great relationships with your students, but just we do have that sort of protective factor that it's all confidential in our office, and the follow-through may be higher in terms of getting supports and getting some testing done. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, retroactive meaning that all of a sudden they come to us after the fact because they failed some tests or whatever, that they have an issue. That isn't like that slate clean, they gotta live with that and maybe retake a class or whatever.
They may, you know, there is certain situations and there's always an appeal that they can try. That's through the dean of students. So, but for our office, we would not be able to write an accommodation that had said, oh, the test back in September, they should have had 80 minutes. We can't do that to retake anything.
And then you kind of confused me on the language barrier thing. You kind of said yes and no.
English as a second language, we wouldn't do any formal English as a second language training for students. However, if they are affiliated with our office with other diagnoses, and I'm glad that you asked to clear this up. So let's say the student has ADHD, and they also have maybe a reading disability, that coupled with maybe they speak a foreign language, that's their native language. We have in the past provided an application, which is also on lockdown. Let's say the student is taking an exam on a computer down in our testing center, they receive additional time due to other documented disabilities. And this gets really sticky because there's so many working parts to all of this. But we have in the past provided a translation app. So if the student comes across a question on their exam and they need to translate a word, they can translate that word into their native language so that the comprehension is a little bit better. But again, that's all coupled with a lot of other probably diagnoses that they have going on. So we wouldn't work with students that are strictly just English language learners. That's not a documented disability.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we do have a student that their second language is English, isn't there, so I'm new here on campus, so bear with me.
Sure.
But isn't there another like campus organization for students that are new to this country?
Yeah, the international.
International, that's what I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Yes, international. So we could send them there as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's just the English as a second language. If there's other things going on, then please let's have them come to our office and complete an application as well.
Thank you.
All right, so the reasons why we do this, and I'm confident you have all heard of these. We have Section 504 Rehabilitation Act of 1973. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act that supports and people with disabilities, and we also have an NDSU policy that is in place where we do need to make sure that we have equal access for all students regardless of their disability. So those are the three whys that fall in a legal area, but I always like to put a plug in that I believe we're here on campus to support all students and to make them feel welcome. And so sometimes we do other things, not because we legally have to, but because it's just the right thing to do. And I always like to keep that in the forefront. They have these laws that protect them, but also I think as humans, we want to know that we're doing these things because you genuinely care about the way that I learn. And so that is important to keep in the forefront. So we do the process?
Sure. So what is the process to receive accommodations? So the first step is the student would complete an application online, and that's usually our first sort of instruction to students that say, I think I have a disability, or I'm getting diagnosed, or I've got broken arm, or I'm pregnant and I need supports in that area. So we encourage the student to apply online. It's on our webpage. And it's just a brief application the student would complete. Along with that, the application does require that there is documentation to support their request. That could be a healthcare provider, something from a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counselor. We just need something so that we can take a look at what the diagnosis is and what they're presenting with before we create a meeting and we meet with the student. So we will pair that student with an accessibility specialist. At that point, that specialist will reach back out to the student. So it is a little bit of a process. Now that we have 4 accessibility specialists, it is going a little quicker this year. So one of the specialists will reach back out to the student to ensure the documentation was uploaded. And to also set up an interactive meeting, because I feel like even though we get documentation, that's just a really small part, a very small snapshot of where the student is sort of performing at, if you will. So at that point, we meet with the student, we really kind of dig in to see what is actually going on, and we individualize those accommodations according to disability and what we feel is appropriate. We also do a lot of connection with campuses nationwide. We do research on things and we kind of see what everyone else is doing kind of across the nation in terms of maybe something new that we're seeing more of that we haven't really had accommodations for. We do collaborate a lot with nationwide campuses and also our in-house specialists, which have a really wide variety of gifts and talents, if you will. So once that interactive process is complete, we approve the student for accommodations. This can happen at any point in the year. We do have a big influx, of course, at the beginning of the year when students are coming in, freshmen. But it can happen at any point in the school year. So, you know, faculty can expect to see those letters of accommodation, which is what you will get in your NDSU email when a student's been approved for an accommodation. So just so you know that can happen all year. You'll probably get quite a few more at the beginning of the year and at the beginning of each semester as well. So that will come across. We approve students and then they just have that running relationship with us throughout their collegiate career. It could be they come in the office as a freshman and, you know, we even have graduate students, we have PhDs, we've got, we run the gamut of students wherever they're at in their college career.
So do they have to upload the documentation or can they just bring it to you?
We prefer that it is handled through, the portal, just because it's cleaner and it's faster. If the student wants to walk in, their, documentation, absolutely, for sure, yes, yep.
Our portal is a secured portal too. And so, a lot of times families are just used to emailing reports. And we do understand that, but also at the risk of being confidential. Often I will reply back and ask them to upload it themselves, versus emailing it in an unsecured site. But that is kind of one of the biggest reasons is our portal is really a secured site that nobody has access to, so. Okay, so these are common accommodations that we see at the university level. And when we're finished with this one, we'll kind of go into how you can support students within your courses. Exam support is a very large piece of accommodations for students at the NDSU campus with reduced distraction environment, and that doesn't have to be through the Center for Accessibility. There are lots of professors on campus that have a side classroom that they're comfortable with students and they stay after if there's extended time. And so many students prefer to come to the center because they've been doing it. But we've had a lot of professors say, I don't mind monitoring. I'm okay with getting them set up. We have access to this. It can be at the same time. They just stay a little bit later until the student is able to get it done. And so I think that's a really inclusive measure for students to feel like, okay, you care about me. You know that I have these needs. My processing time might be a little longer. And it really is a great relationship builder. There are also times where you're booked. You can't stay 30 minutes after. And so we understand that as well. Note-taking supports is a very large accommodation for many students. PowerPoints ahead of time is really important. Audio recording of your lecture is helpful. And I know we have, since COVID, often have some of our lectures recorded already. Allowing students to take photographs of your whiteboard if you're a note person or writing, so that they can just focus on the auditory piece and then get that afterwards. We have an app called Glean, and it's amazing. And this app, you can upload your PowerPoints. They can audio record the lecture as it ties to your PowerPoint. They can add little like exclamations because you had maybe said, this is important, it's on an exam, or something that gives a clue. So they can put all of those in without having to write anything. It's just all right in one screen. And then afterwards it translates and it connects your pictures to the audio piece. So you have both the audio and you have the translation all on one software. And then lastly, the use of laptops for students to have, if they have their own type of screen reader or something that supports their needs for accommodation. And lastly, alternative text is another really big accommodation. Large print, ensuring your documents are digital, that they can use the technology to have them read if need be, audiobooks, and then alt text, which we'll get into when we talk a little bit more about specific examples, is really helpful when you're using images and tables.
So where can I go to learn more about Glean?
So Glean is, you can definitely just like Google Glean and look at it, but we have a subscription. Very, very expensive. And so we have so many users, but we like instructors to know that that is out there and available, and a lot of students will be using it. but you can go look at like YouTube videos of people using Glean to see all of the abilities and capabilities that it has. But you personally, I mean, you can just go buy it yourself, but it is quite expensive.
Okay,
We do have other options, note-taking supports too. It's not just the Glean. We have, live scribe pens that we can check out to students as well, which would record a lecture. It comes with a special notebook that the student can use. We do provide other, things as well. If the student just needs an audio recording, we can just provide that audio recording accommodation. And students can use their own, they can use their phone if they want to. There's lots of applications out there. We do, there is Notability. Again, we don't pay for that, but it's quite a cheap subscription for students. There are some free ones out there. I believe Word now, which is, given to students through NDSU campus. There is an option in that OneNote to do recordings. So there's lots of options. Glean is just something we felt really covered so many, a combination of things that students needed, that it was just a really, really good tool. And, but like Molly said, it's expensive. And so we kind of make sure that the student is really, really in need of all of the things. Otherwise, we'll probably recommend some other things as well to students. So it's not just that one. Like we have lots of stuff for note-taking supports.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. You say you're gonna go through like each of these individually.
So we'll go through now, we'll go through what can you do, but not specifically each individual thing.
I just have a little follow-up question. So when I worked with a disability office before, or I guess you guys are called the Center for Accessibility, is that the whole name?
So we're the Center for Accessibility and Disability Resources.
Oh, okay.
I answer the phone now and just say NDSU Center for Accessibility. The other part is way too long.
Yeah, sounds good. So in my previous times I've worked, I have a really difficult time with the balance of being able to prepare for class as a professor if I give the PowerPoints to everybody. And I've found that a lot of times when I send PowerPoints, they've ended up with different groups of students, which then feels unfair to my other students. And I create guided notes for every class that are available to all of the students that have everything that's on the slides on them. And so in the past, my conversations have been that the guided notes are sufficient because they have what the students need. But I just don't know with new people if that's still true. Because that is obviously the one that we get the most often is the PowerPoint one. So in the past, I've always just sent the guided notes. And I typically ask for students in class to fill them in, and then I send them after class to any students that have accommodations. But I asked my my grad assistant to do it this year, so I'll just have them already done. So students would have them already filled in.
Yeah, and it's hard to stand up here and say that that works for all students because it's not going to work for all students, but I do understand your, like if one student has the PowerPoint and they share it with a friend, and it would depend what's on your PowerPoint. Like, is that
It's just words. I don't, because I use universal design programming in my class, so I generally don't have pictures on my slides, or if I do, it's just a picture with a description. So
yeah, and so I
and
can
those are
say,
available also on Blackboard. I give all the pictures on Blackboard from the PowerPoint.
yes. Yeah, and that's kind of like when we go in, Blackboard has Ally built in for you to kind of check accessibility. And that will be a really good tool to guide you. But I wouldn't be able to stand up here and say that that works for all students. And so when they meet with the accessibility specialist, they talk about what is your need for having the PowerPoint beforehand. And often it is pre-teaching for them at a college level. And that's to get the information. And we know that pre-teaching anything for students with any type of a disability is going to support them further in academics at any grade level. And so that's what I look at when you're getting the PowerPoint ahead of time. It's you are given the ability to make sure you know and understand the content before you have to listen to someone talk about it. I previously worked with students who were deaf, and used American Sign Language as their main language. Well, if they haven't seen the sign, so then you have a sign language interpreter signing it in the front of the room. There is no knowledge or content for them to know what you're talking about. And so that's the piece of the ahead of time that's important to me. And that is really just individually based. And then, I don't know if the information on the PowerPoint is like something that they shouldn't know before class because you're giving a test, or, I'm not sure why sharing it ahead of time or with other people. A lot of times PowerPoints are just on Blackboard. They're just there for.
I find that if I put PowerPoints on Blackboard, I don't have students in class.
They don't show up to
At
class.
all.
Yeah. And I think that's where I was like, my mind just went right there, like that they're like, oh, I have all the information I need. I don't need to go to class. So me and my friends can skip class. Yeah,
No, they literally will not.
100%. Yeah, I totally get that. So the only other thing I feel like I want to add, that when we do our interactive process with students and we are providing when they get approved for these accommodations, we always say that they do have to sign off on academic honesty, and that any materials that they are getting from you, whether it's recorded lectures, PowerPoints, that they are using it for their own personal resources and that they are not sending these out to the world or to anybody else. So it's hard to control sort of student behavior, but I want you to know, we do front load that for you, because that is a real concern, is that it's gonna get shared around and then it's an excuse to not go to class. So 100% get that.
I just use a lot of active learning, and I find when I have given the PowerPoints to the class, I end up with about 10% of my classroom.
Can I just kind of clarify something that you brought up? So maybe I was kind of when I was getting the information, I flipped my classroom, so we do kind of more active learning in class, but I provide guided notes, right? So it's better than the PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint doesn't have,
all of your thoughts and
Right.
what you want the student to
and so
see from
students
that.
tend to, like, that's just not informative unless you have notes with it. So I kind of have guided notes that go with the PowerPoint. I kind of assumed it was in lieu of publishing the PowerPoints. Is that not the case? Is it a separate thing? Or are the guided notes?
It only depends on what the student needs. If they need it prior to learn, like I was talking.
Well, I do publish it a week ahead of time.
Right, then
They have a video they have to do with the guided notes. Forth, so it's more the ahead of time, not whether it's guided notes or PowerPoint.
Yeah, so the other piece with the PowerPoint matches with our Glean. So if you are one who is a lecturer and you're using your PowerPoint as your lecture, kind of like what we're doing, the audio is matched with the screen, the
PowerPoint,
visual.
yeah.
But
So they
because
will
the
upload
video's
that.
already done that, we kind of just do.
Yeah, so I mean, if you have all the bells and whistles, if you've got the audio, if you have the PowerPoints, if you've got the guided notes, to be honest, that's a conversation that student really should be having with us, saying we don't, like, this faculty doesn't, they're doing all the things, like, we don't really need that additional Glean support. So that's why I say it's really a blanket accommodation, and I use that blanket loosely, that students, every class is different, every faculty is different, and we do encourage students to come back to the office throughout the semester. And they also have the power during their next sort of round of sending out accommodations in the spring, deciding what they really need to send to faculty. And sometimes they just aren't going to know until they get into your class and see how you operate and what you've got sort of uploaded into Blackboard. So I feel like things are really, really moving more into, you guys are providing all the things, because what's good for students with disabilities is typically good for every student. And so I think that's really, really great that you guys are doing that. So, this feedback for us is really good as well, that there are faculty out there that are kind of doing all of the audio piece, the visuals all ahead of time in Blackboard. And I would say, it could be that you just upload your PowerPoints without the guided notes. If you want students to show up to class, you could have two versions. It's kind of up to you. And then just share the one version with the guided notes to the student that has asked for prior. And it shouldn't be that many, to be honest. I mean, we do serve around 1,000 students, but yeah. That makes sense. I mean, you could do that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think, my understanding from the previous group was like, most of the time we give the PowerPoint thing because we don't want to pay for them to have a note taker. And so it's like a case by case basis, but like, kind of like most of the time it was a way to get around like notes on taking.
It was an alternative, yes, because the note takers, if we ask for volunteers, and first of all, faculty doesn't all call to ask if there's anyone that would be willing to upload notes into the AIM portal. It's all confidential. The thing with that though, like you said, it's not reliable. Some students may not show up to class. There's no prerequisite to how good of a note taker you are. So students could be getting notes that are like all over the place and not really beneficial. And so that's why we did this, just more reliable to do it through Glean or an audio recording. Or things sound like a lot of faculty are really providing that already, so that's wonderful.
Yeah. That Glean too is also our way of ensuring you're getting the instructor's information and not the other student who maybe heard it differently. So.
Okay, real quick about the exams. So the students can always come to your center to take an exam like in a quiet room.
We have two different settings. So we have a distraction free, which means they might not be alone. There might be multiple people taking exams. And then we have a private testing room. And that's where they have a room just for themselves.
If they need a screen reader or something along those lines, yeah. So that sometimes that private room could be if the student needs a screen reader for exams. So they're not disturbing other students in that distraction reduced environment.
Do they have to make an appointment?
Yes, it would be an approved accommodation to have a distraction reduced or a private testing room with us. They still have to go through the process of being a user of the resources and the center on campus.
We asked them to we put this in place last spring, I believe. It's a 3-day advance notice of an exam. And it should be with you along with our center that they need to schedule that. So we have time to communicate, but also to work on organization and pre-planning so that they're ready. But yeah, in order to have all of the students that need testing accommodations, we do ask for 3 days prior to sign up for a testing slot.
And they schedule online. Once they're approved for that accommodation, the students, and we encourage them to schedule all their exams in advance. So the student will go in and schedule a test. We always say it needs to be at the same time as the rest of your peers are taking the exam. You can't move them around unless you get faculty approval. Then it will it'll show up on 2 ends. Faculty will get a notification that the student has scheduled with us. We get the notification and then we work our magic to make sure everybody's got their exams when they come down on for their exam that they've scheduled. But again, we always say, please put all of those in as soon as possible. As soon as the syllabus comes out, hopefully students are getting those scheduled. There is that 3-day window though that we ask because we don't want to put you guys in a spot to scramble to get us an exam. And you will upload all of those exams. You can walk them over. Some faculty prefer to walk over their exams, that's fine. And some prefer to just upload, and you will fill out a testing agreement if you have students in your class that have been approved for that accommodation.
Okay, great.
Okay, we got the 5-minute.
I feel like we didn't even let you get that.
That's okay.
And I'm like, holy thanks, I have a question too.
Do you have more questions though about the process for your students or for your room?
Well, I actually had a question with the testing accommodations as well, because I got those emails that you guys sent with some of the ahead of time.
For
Yeah.
these three things, yeah.
So for each one of them, I have to go in and there's like a link that says something like agreement.
Testing agreement, yeah. Yeah.
So I have to go in for each one of them. And then there's something like a clause that says I will provide proctoring.
If you want the student to stay with you, if you can provide a distraction reduced environment and additional time for that student, that is where you would say, I would prefer to proctor. And so then that student will automatically know that they would not schedule down with us. Again, probably having a conversation with that student at that
That's what
point.
my next question was gonna be. Do I have time to talk with them before having to sign that agreement? Or do I have to do that like before classes start?
No, you just have.
Because I usually try to meet with them one-on-one and see what they need, because they can do the test remotely on Zoom. And a lot of times, most of my students with disability just like that, and they can mute the classroom, they stay in their dorm. But if they don't have a quiet place to do it, they might prefer doing the testing center.
Prior to your first exam. For sure, yeah. And students, you know, the really diligent students are probably going to try to schedule ahead of time. And so if they run into an issue with trying to schedule an exam, then they're instructed to call the center, and then we can explain to them that maybe faculty may be proctoring their own exam, but just to hang tight and if it comes to 3 days prior to their first exam, to make sure they check in with them so that we can get everything straightened out. 5 days is preferable if, you know, their week before the exam is scheduled, still is not able to schedule online with us to come down. Then we reach out to faculty and just say, hey, you know, were you wanting to proctor? Would you like the student to come down? Because we would love to provide that service for you and just kind of there.
But well, I'm wondering too with the testing if, based on accommodations, if I can. So I tend to, depending on the students and the situation, I'll say if you're gonna use the testing center, you have a deadline to schedule it. Is that a fair?
They know they have 3
Stipulation.
days before their exam.
To do it themselves, yes. Some students will come down in a panic because they are not, the system will lock them out. Their accessibility specialist can override that, but they would probably be reaching out to faculty and saying, we have a student that's last minute scheduling. Are you able to get the test to us in time? We don't guarantee, because it really is, we put that ownership back on the student to get things scheduled and get themselves organized. Just, you know, common courtesy to everyone, and faculty included, that they get these tests scheduled and in a timely manner.
Is that right, like I hold everyone's test results until all the tests are in.
Yes.
So then I tell my students, like, I will return graded material 1 week after, just to give myself some room for makeups or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I have students that are like, not scheduling. And then like 3 or 4 days later, they're scheduled their test, and then it's kind of just, it's not bad, it's just inconvenient. So I'm wondering if it's fair to establish.
And us as well, because we have a lot of student scheduling. So
And they should be scheduling their exam the same day and time that your exam is in.
That's what I told my students before. I'm expecting you to be at the test center during your class.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
They cleared it with you. That we look and make sure that the student is, sometimes we don't catch everyone, but we typically, that's things that we kind of look for to make sure that students are scheduling at the time that their peers are taking their exam as well.
Is there anything on Blackboard you were gonna share?
So no, I was just going through,
Take away your.
it's online. I just with some examples, like if we had extra time of, you know, accessible
Okay,
text.
'cause
So
yeah,
everything you can see on the,
I mean, I've been working with them and stuff.
Yeah.
We have so much stuff that's,
Visuals.
yeah, the visuals and stuff, when you teach an online class and when it's history,
Yeah.
materials, there's so many images and
Oh,
stuff, so
boy.
I constantly am fighting with that.
yeah,
To make sure everything.
yeah, and you know, labeling your images.
Yes.
Is that not accessible? Cause like the text is too far apart.
It's hard to read for those with vision. So I know it looks really nice when it's all lined up and equal on both sides. But yeah, there's just a bunch of different ideas of what is an accessible text and what is not quite as accessible, or it makes it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, we are seeing an uptick in dyslexia diagnosis as well. So very important with text that you're using. There is a dyslexic text font that you can, you just Google it and it will tell you what it is and convert all of your stuff to that font if you need to. Students should already know how to do that, so they could change their own font if it's a Word doc or something along those lines that they can edit. Color blindness is another one. I've had a few things come through with that as well. So identifying like in a STEM class, if they have color coding that they need to do, sometimes staff needs to be aware of that. But I've been trying to really be pretty meticulous on kind of putting in, like if there was a vision other than just colorblind. So that faculty kind of, if the student seems to be struggling, it's not a kind of a question on whether it's their ability or if it's something else. Yeah. Yeah.
This is like our
Oh.
school.
This is NDSU, so this is the diagnosis. You'll see hidden disabilities really is our largest category that we serve at NDSU. The psychological needs, ADHD, chronic health, you can't always see those, lupus, different
Lot of
pieces.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. And come and visit anytime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you all have such great experiences too with your classrooms. If you ever are like, hey, I tried this and it was really successful. I love to hear that.
Yes.
And we like to put together little resource books and to share them out. So we really do want it to be like, you know, yes, we write the accommodations, but we're not the end all say all. Like you are all very knowledgeable
Yeah.
and can help us too in ensuring that how your class runs is successful for everyone. And some of them, like I met with, must have been plant science. They don't have, everything is physically in the classroom. And so then we have to look at different ways that it's accessible.